Folks, welcome to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. Another exciting show today. And once again, Jack Taboda is not in the office today. He has been swamped, and of course, he's always available by phone call. He's available to meet with you, to go through that 3-step review. He misses the show today. He wishes he was in studio, but fortunately, we're in good hands with a very good friend of his and our guest today, and that is Tim Newell, is the Managing Director and Lead Portfolio Manager of Harvest Investment Services. And we are going to do a special show today on 401k. Tell us more, Tim.
Larry, thanks for having me on again today. It's always exciting to be able to provide financial education to folks and really to be able to give people real tools that they can use that can help them do a better job managing their finances and their investments. Larry, as you know, we at Harvest Investment Services are thrilled to have the affiliation that we have here with Taboda & Associates. Over the years, we've been working with you and Jack, and it's been a great relationship. Larry, I was thinking let's take a few minutes today to talk about 401k plans and our 401k ActiveWatch program. As you know, retirement plan assets are often one of the largest slices of that investment pie portfolio that the average American household has, and yet it's often a slice of that investment pie that by default many times gets the least amount of active attention. And there's many different reasons for that, but any number of our listeners out there in Radio Land today are thinking about their investment portfolio, and they know that's true, that's a very significant chunk of their total investments, what they've been saving for retirement. And yet it's one that often is laden with a lot of confusion because there's often so many choices to be made, and yet there's very little help that's really truly given to help folks make those investment choices. All the different options that they would have available, whether it be in their 401k plan or their 403b plan or their TSA plan, some form of a employer-sponsored retirement plan. And they just have so many choices that often it leads to confusion and just not being sure what's the right place to be in and the right accounts to use within the 401k plan that they have available. And
Tim, I've experienced that myself for years and years. I've been through a couple of different employers and a couple of different 401k plans, and you get on the website, you look at the 20, 30 different options, and then you have to try to figure out, well, this one had this return, this one had that return, and then you talk to the person. I really never felt there was a direction, and yet it seemed like it always had a lot of rad. It really is. It's frustrating, and I think the biggest issue is who can give you some really intelligent advice as to how to manage this thing.
Great question, Larry. Well, we at Harvest think that there definitely needs to be a better way to manage the 401k plan, retirement plan assets than the way that it has been historically done. The average 401k plan has been managed in some form of a buy and hold or set it and forget it strategy. In other words, somebody might pick these 4 or 5 funds based upon the performance over the last 2 to 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
And they put 20% into each of these 5 funds, and then they come back and look at it a couple of years later and see how they're doing. And then they'll maybe tweak it. Maybe they might even get some advice from their broker or their Merrill Lynch guy or gal or whoever they're working with out there. They get some advice and they might tweak it a little bit and make a few small changes. But by and large, most people do some form of buy and hold and somewhat set it and forget it.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Tabota, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. I am Larry Chappell, you're the co-host of the show. Jack is not in studio today. However, you can still call us at 630-777-7955 to set up that three-step review, to talk to Jack so that we can discuss your financial retirement plans, a host of different options there. We have today in studio, we have Tim Newell with Harvest Investment Services as our special guest. We're talking about 401k plans. Go ahead, Tim.
Larry, we were just talking about how the average person saving for retirement is using some form of set it and forget it in their retirement plan portfolio, whether that be with their 401k plans or their IRAs or what have you. And the real challenge with that strategy, or shall I say lack thereof, is it usually makes for a pretty painful roller coaster ride through the up and downs of the market, right?
Yes.
The markets, when they're going up, we call that a bull market, and when they're going down, we call that a bear market.
Yep.
And markets go through cycles, as you know, Larry, and it always feels good when it's going up, but the ride down can be pretty painful. And it's not a matter of when or if the market will go down again. It's when will that happen again.
Right.
For our listeners out there, if you just think back over the last 14 years, take it back to just 2000. I've been in this business since the early 80s, 1981, and I've seen a number of different market cycles over the years. But let's just take the last 14 years and look at the major market swings that the average person has been through. We look at the period from about 2000 to 2003. What we saw is about a 50% decline, and many of those gains that were accumulated from the late 90s all disappeared in the matter of 18 to 24 months. And then they saw a pretty decent recovery, and those assets grew back again, and often they grew back to where they were at in 2000 by the end of or the fall of 2007, only to see the markets turn a corner again and go yet down another 50 some odd percent, 56.7% actually. Wow. For the broad market. And and that happened from the fall of 2007 to the spring of 2009. And we're just this year, where we've seen enough of a recovery where we're back to exceeding the balances that we once had back in 2000. Wow. In the average 401k plan out there, or any type of an invested retirement plan, or any kind of an account that's invested in the equities markets. And so that roller coaster ride is a pretty painful ride with that buy and hold strategy. And what we're saying at Harvest, and our mantra, is that there's a better way. There is a way to avoid the bulk of those major market declines and participate on the upside of the market and not participate on the bulk of the downside of the market. But it's contrary to what most folks have been sold or told related to their finances. So if you're listening today and and the hair on the back of your neck is standing up saying, wait a minute, this doesn't quite match with what I've been taught, that you need to just sit it out and ride it out. Stay tuned, because we're going to talk through this a little bit and talk about what it is that makes the 401kActiveWatch program that we use different than what most folks are doing today.
Folks, you're listening to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Tabota, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. 630-777-7955. That's the number, 630-777-7955. Now make sure and don't touch that dial, because we're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about 401ks. You're not going to want to miss this.
His face lost all expression. Said if you're gonna play the game, boy, you gotta learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run.
Folks, welcome back to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda, your 401k IRA rollover specialist. Jack is not in the office today. My name is Larry Chappell, the co-host of Financial Planning. We have a special guest today, a dear friend of Jack Taboda's. We have Tim Newell, the managing director and lead portfolio manager of Harvest Investment Services. And we're talking about 401ks. For those of you that are not retired yet, how do you manage your current 401k with your company? And for those of you that are about to retire, we'll be talking about that in-service withdrawal, or what are you going to do as far as the 401k? What are some of your options on maybe rolling that over, maybe sitting down with Jack and talking about a 3-step review as far as what you want to do with that, or your entire financial planning portfolio, whether you're in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, what have you. Jack would love to take a look at that, sit down, look at what you're paying in fees, what you're getting on a return on your investment. Of course, Jack Taboda also has a lawyer on staff, so he can look at estates and wills, and an accountant on staff to look at any of those. Let's welcome Tim back as we continue the show on the 401k Active Watch. Tim?
So, Larry, before the break, we were talking about the typical market cycles that we go through, where we see these big, huge swings over periods of time. And we talked about over the last 14 years, we've seen 2 downward swings that exceeded 50%, and how painful that roller coaster ride can be. And how the average person is doing some form of buy and hold. But often, that average investor gets to a place, if for no other reason but they just can't stand the pain anymore, they bail out after the market has already seen a pretty significant downturn, and they've already suffered some pretty serious losses in their investment portfolio from where it peaked out to where they decided to finally bail.
Sure.
And it might go down a little bit more, but then long after the markets have turned around and they've gone back up again, and we're well into the next bull market cycle, the average person decides that once again they can no longer stand the pain, but now it's a different kind of pain because they hear their neighbors and their coworkers and their brother-in-law talking about how they're making all this money in the market, and they're sitting on the sideline in cash or bonds or something that's not really producing a very decent return. And for no other reason, once again, they can't stand the pain and they decide to get back in, only to discover that they got back in right back up toward the top again, and then it turns and it goes down and they go through the same bath all over again, you know. And this is the typical roller coaster ride that the average investor goes through, and not just with their 401k or their retirement plan, but often for any of their invested assets. We at Harvest Investment Services, with the strategies that we employ, whether they be with our 401k Active Watch program or the private wealth accounts, or however this money is managed, we employ strategies to help avoid some of those major market declines.
Folks, you're listening to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. 630-777-7955. Every week I get calls. How do you spell that name again on the website? Taboda.com, Teboda.com. And Tim will tell you that on that website, you'll see a tab at the front called, at the top, that says 401k Active Watch. We're going to be talking about that for those of you that still have your 401k with your company and you're working. For those of you that are saying, look, I'm 59 and a half, I'm looking at the in-service withdrawal, we can look at that. For those of you that are already retired, we can give you a second opinion on going over your portfolio Tim, tell us more about what they're going to find when they click on the tab, or how it is that you can help our listeners.
Well, we're excited to be affiliated with Tabota & Associates and to be able to provide the 401k Active Watch as a real solution to folks that have retirement plans. And as you said, if you go to the website, Tabota.com, and you click on the 401k Active Watch tab, and you can spend some time in there watching some videos and reading some white papers, and you can even sign up and get some information online, or you can call that number there and get some further information and have your questions answered. We're going to try to take a little bit of time to try to unpack what is 401k Active Watch and how does it work and why does it work for our listeners today on the radio. But obviously there's some limitations on our ability to be able to put a chart in front of somebody on the radio and put some of the graphs and the illustrations that we use in our content there on the website. So I'd encourage the listeners to take some time to go to Tabota.com, click on 401k Active Watch, spend some time going through some of the content there, and it'll help to further support some of the things that we're going to talk about here today. Well, 401k Active Watch will help you be in a position to participate in the upside of the markets that we call bull markets, while limiting your participation in the down markets we call bear markets. You see, the great majority of investment advice that investors have received over the last several decades, has been derived from predictions about what might occur, or some academic theories about what should occur in the financial markets. Well, 401k Active Watch is really different because it's not another market prediction-based timing service. It's not a flawed theory-based investing service that will help keep you invested in a way that you ride it out and you, no matter what, and you ride through the next market downturn, only to inherit those big losses that are difficult to recover from. 401k Active Watch is based upon using a rules-based model that don't rely upon making any type of future market predictions, and it does not rely on any type of flawed academic theory. In all of our models, we use what's called fact-based investing, and we move the positions in the portfolios based upon what is happening at any given time in the various different segments of the financial markets. We don't make moves trying to predict what might happen in the future. You see, Larry, our goal is to help folks stay fully invested during bull market cycles that are confirmed bull market cycles in the appropriate positions based upon a given model that they might be in, and then be defensive and protected in the down, or what we call bear markets.
Okay.
So in other words, be in when the market's going up,
right,
and out when the market's going down. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, driving down the street.
Right.
You're driving down the street, Larry. When you see a red light, what do?
You stop.
You stop. And when you sit there until it turns green, and when it turns green,
you go.
You go. It's really, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's essentially what we do. In other words, there's times when there's a red light that's blaring in our face, and we don't ignore the red light. We don't. It's almost like saying, you drive up to a railroad crossing, and if the gate is down, only idiots go around the gate and keep going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
well, there's times in the market where there's signs that are just like that railroad crossing gate, and it's down.
Right.
And it's crazy to just continue to plow forward, even though the gate is down and the lights are flashing in our face.
And that's where you, the listener, you need to know that there's a professional, there's somebody with expertise looking out for your portfolio, like Jack Tabota and like Tim Newell here with the 401k Watch. Folks, you're listening to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Tabota, your IRA 401k rollover specialist, 630-777-7955, Tabota.com, Teboda.com. 401kActiveWatch.com. Special guest today, Tim Newell, Managing Director and Lead Portfolio Manager of Harvest Investment Services, talking about 401ks. We're going to be right back. Don't touch that dial.
You gotta learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run.
Folks, welcome back to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. 630-777-7955. Talking about 401ks today. For those of you that have a 401k or currently still employed, making contributions into that, many of you have thought, what am I going to do with this 401k? How can you call us? You've called in, you've said, hey, how can I get some help on what I should do with my 401k? Well, we have Jack Taboda is not in the studio today. We have Jack Taboda's very good friend, Tim Newell, Managing Director and Lead Portfolio Manager of Harvest Investment Services. We're talking about the 401k Watch, which you can go to the Taboda.com, click on 401k Watch. All kinds of information there on how you can manage your current 401k. Of course, we're also going to be talking about if you're approaching 59 and a half and in service withdrawal. If you're already retired, you can still call, set up that appointment with Jack Taboda for the 3-step review as we look at what you're paying in fees, what are you getting for a return on your investments. As Jack often says, make sure that you don't run out of money. All of those things are important to talk about today. We're focused on the 401k Watch. Tim, give us a little recap on where we've been for the listeners just tuning in and where we're going here.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, if you're just tuning in, we've spent the last few minutes on the air just talking about the challenges that folks have in making decisions on what's the best way to manage their 401k or any type of retirement plan for that matter, and how do you manage it with the typical roller coaster ride that the markets go through. And I'm sure that you've often thought to yourself, there's got to be a better way, in those painful times when you've seen a 10, 20, 30, or 50% or more decline in your portfolio balance. You're saying to yourself, there's got to be a better way. And what we're really saying to you here today, there's good news. Yes, there is a better way. We think it's 401kActiveWatch. So what is 401kActiveWatch? 401kActiveWatch is a way that you as a participant, you as an investor in your retirement plan can get some help, some advice at getting your plan somewhat under management. And there's a number of different ways that this can be done. But if you go to the website, Taboda.com, and you click on 401kActiveWatch, there's a number of white papers and videos and things that you can watch. Ultimately, the way it works is you would, off the website or calling in to chat with us or coming in to see Jack Taboda, you would pick a model that's most appropriate with your level of risk tolerance and your time horizon and what model best matches the investment choices that you have available today with the mutual funds that you might have available within your current 401k plan. Because what we would then do is try to mirror the exact investment choices that are currently being used at any given time, any given quarter in that model to the mutual fund choices that you have available within your plan. So, for example, if we have 18% exposure to a small cap growth fund, to small cap growth, we're going to find the best small cap growth fund, assuming that there is a good one available within your 401k plan, and have you put 18% in that fund. If you're supposed to have 13% in large cap value, we're going to find the best large cap value fund that you have available within your plan and have you put that 13% in that fund, etc. And we would work with you from the very beginning, once you put it under management with the 401kActiveWatch program, whether you actually go online and execute the trades, or you grant us permission to do that with you. However we get that done, ultimately you're going to get into the appropriate funds that you should be in based upon the model that you chose. And then at any given point along the way, whether that be mid-quarter or typically at the very beginning of a new quarter, if markets are trending out, or if that railroad gate is down, as we talked about in the previous segment, or the red light is on,
right,
we're going to go back to cash or over to bonds, or we're going to move it to the sidelines or a little bit more of a defensive position for the period of time that markets are trending down. And then when markets turn and they start trending back up again, we would in turn give you the appropriate advice, which funds that you should be going into and why, and tell you what percentage you should put into each one of those funds. And whether you went in online and you made the trade in your 401k account, or you authorized us to do that for you or with you. Either way, however that happens, we would make sure that you're invested in the appropriate funds at the right timing based upon the model that you chose. So what this really is, Larry, is active tactical management, which we'll unpack a little bit probably in the next segment.
Folks, you're listening to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda. Have our special guest in, Tim Newell. We're coming up on a break talking about 401k Active Watch. Keep in mind you can go to Taboda.com, TEBODA.com. Click on the Active 401k Watch tab at the front. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run.
Welcome back to Financial Planning with your host, Jack Taboda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. Jack is not in studio today. We have his very good friend Tim Newell, Managing Director and Lead Portfolio Manager of Harvest Investment Services. I am Larry Chappell, the co-host of Financial Planning. An exciting show today. It's so important, folks, that you get a handle on the 401k. You have to get a handle on where you're going with your portfolio, where you're going with your retirement. Call after call after call I get, Tim, is to where people call in and they say, you know, I have the money in a 401k. I took it out. I put it into cash. I'm tired of the market. I don't know what to do, so I'm not doing anything. That's the very thing that you're addressing here. Folks, you have to have, you know, whether it's a lawyer or a doctor out there, you always resort to a professional. That's what we're doing today. We on this show, we have the professionals talking about what are your options, regardless of where you're at in your retirement planning. It's very important that you understand that somebody's there to help you along the line that's a professional. Tim is exactly that. Tell us more, Tim.
Well, Larry, we've been chatting here on the air about 401ks, but reality, these principles and these concepts work whether we're talking about an IRA account, whether we're talking about a 401k or a TSA or a trust account. These same principles apply. What we're really suggesting is that whether somebody is 25 years old or 85 years old, that they have to have downside risk controls built into every segment of their portfolio.
Good.
And whether you're doing that through a firm like Taboda & Associates in conjunction with Harvest, or you're doing that on your own or through somebody else, folks, wherever you do it, make sure that you've got downside risk controls built into your portfolio. And you know, as you can see, or as you're listening, if you've been paying attention, you know that 401k Active Watch is really different by design than the way that the average person has kind of been taught to manage their money in their 401k plan or their retirement plans, because it's really designed, as we discussed earlier, to avoid some of those huge market losses that really frustrate the retirement plans of most folks that hope that they could retire at a given age and then go through a major downturn and realize now I've got to work another 4 to 6 or 10 years in order to be able to make that up and get back on track. You know, I hope that we've at nothing else, we've intrigued the listeners to pick up the phone and call Jack and set up a time to come in and chat with them about what they can do to better manage all of the different aspects of their investment portfolio. But let's take a few more minutes to talk about this 401k Active Watch, because there's really 3 different ways, or really 4 different ways that somebody can use 401k Active Watch with whatever form of a retirement plan that they have. So the first way would be, let's say that you have a 401k plan that you've got X number of mutual fund choices that are available to you in the plan. As we said earlier, you would go online or work with Jack to select the model that's most appropriate to you, and then we would upload into our system online the investment choices, all of the investment choices that you currently have available in your current plan. Then, based upon the model that you chose, Larry, we would then get you the initial recommendations as to exactly what funds that you should be in and by what percentages. And then the first trading day every quarter, we're going to give you an email that you would point and click on a link, and that hyperlink would bring you to a page where you would put in your username and password, and a screen would pop up and say, "Welcome back, Larry. These are the changes that you need to go online and make with your 401k plan or your retirement plan as soon as possible."
Wow.
And it'll tell you the specific trades that you should go online and make that are specific to your funds that you have available in your plan. And then each and every quarter, you're going to get a new email telling you exactly what you should be doing within your 401k plan, which funds you should have and what percentage that you should be putting into each one of those funds. In a quarter where markets are trending down, or even mid-quarter, you would get an email from us telling you to move to the sidelines, or move to the guaranteed account, or move to the fixed account, until market conditions have returned back into an upward trend. And kind of like the illustration I gave earlier about the railroad gate, the gate is back up again, and it's time to move forward. Okay, and so when it's time to move forward, we're going to tell you that, and tell you which funds you should continue to move forward with, and we're going to tell you the changes that you should make each and every quarter. Now, for some folks, procrastination is a huge issue for them, or they're just too busy and they've got a lot of things on their plate, and I get that. As a father of 8 kids and a lot of moving parts in a family, I know what it's like to have one more thing that I've got to go do, and it's on the list, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're concerned about not getting those trades made, that you really need to find another way to get them done, to make sure they're done on a timely basis, you can hire us at Harvest, where we would go online and make those trades for you, and that's another way that it can be done. The third way is many people in their plans, whether they realize it or not, they have something called a brokerage window. Now that sounds complicated, but really what it is it's a way to be able to move those assets outside of the limited mutual fund choices that they have available in their plan, and move it over to a brokerage.
Folks, you're listening to Financial Planning. We'll be right back.
Off away, know when to run.
Folks, welcome back to Financial Planning with your host, Jack DeBoda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. We're reaching the end of the show here. We're having a good time. Always enjoy having professionals on the show. Jack is not in studio today. I am Larry Chappell, the co-host of Financial Planning. Today we have in studio Tim Newell, Jack DeBoda's good friend. He's the managing director and lead portfolio manager of Harvest Investment Services. Tim, I thought we'd get more done in the show. We're just running out of time. I hope we can have you on again next week, because there's so much to cover. And before I turn it back over to you, Tim, folks, keep in mind, you can call Jack DeBoda, 777-7955. You're going to get a live person. Jack would love to sit down with you, do his 3-step review. You bring in your taxes. He looks at, is any money falling through the cracks? Looks at the estate plan, looks at where you're invested, whether it's stocks, mutual funds, bonds, annuities. He's going to give you an idea, a better idea on what you're paying for fees. Where are you at as far as what you're getting for a return on your investment? Get that second opinion. You owe that to yourself, to your family, to make sure you're getting a second opinion on everything you're doing. Teboda.com, TEBODA.com. When you go on the website, you can go up there and click on the Active Watch tab, get right to the 401k watch. Tim, tell us, as you're wrapping this up, tell us what we can do for the next show, because I know there's so much more you wanted to cover.
Well, Larry, you're right. We didn't really fully unpack everything connected to the 401k Active Watch, and Larry, I'd love to come back next week and pick it up from where we're going to bookmark it here. We left off before we took the last break kind of talking about the opportunities that exist in a brokerage window. And, if you're listening, you might want to talk to, research with your plan whether or not you have a brokerage window option. And come back next week and let's tune in again, and we'll talk about how you can use the brokerage window to better manage the assets within your 401k plan. Secondly, if you're an employer, or an employer or related to an employer, I'd encourage you not only to go to the website, click on 401k Active Watch, but come back next week, tune in next week at 7 a.m. in the morning, and we're going to try to unpack it from an employer's perspective, what you can be doing to better deal with some of the risk and fiduciary issues that you have as an employer, and we're going to unpack those things in a much greater detail next week.
Folks, Financial Planning, your host, Jack Teboda, your IRA 401k rollover specialist. So glad to have Tim Newell in studio today. 630-777-7955, Teboda.com, TEBODA.com. Remember, as Jack says, you want to make sure that your money is that you're not going to outlive your money. You're not going to run out of that money, that you have a plan in place that looks at the full picture, not just one part here or there. 630-777-7955. We'll talk to you next week.
Know when to walk away, know when to run.